Here are the two cabinets that we're working on before pictures. Actually, it shows the wheels already on them and the toe kick off, but here is where my husband was removing the toe kick. These are actually two cabinets that we believe were homemade, but they're pretty unique. And as soon as I saw them, I had the vision of making them into little roll-around carts that you could use in a kitchen or on a patio or in a garage or even in a craft room. So I think they turned out really cute, but he cut off that toe kick plate, recess, and we added 3-inch wheels that have brakes and 360 turning radius, and so really nice wheels, so they'll scoot around real easy. And the top on the cabinets, which is wood, lifts up, as you see, with hinges, and I found out the hard way, you can press those hinges in the center to hold them, lock them, and to stay up, because while I was working on them, you'll see it come down on my hand, which surprised me, but anyways, I learned that. And here, I cleaned and sanded these really well, and I'm just rubbing on with cloth some oil-based stain and Jacobine, and just to get some color back into the wood where you could tell they were just really dry. And it kind of has a cutting board look on the top, but they're not really to use for cutting, but just for the aesthetic of it. But I just thought I wanted them to stay very rustic looking. So I think this really adds a lot to the wood. And you can see that this one of the drawers on one of the cabinets had a corner that was notched out of it. So we used Bondo and Bondoed it up and sanded it smooth, and just to repair that. And I cleaned the inside of these really good. They're actually have Formica on the inside, which is really good for cleanability. But I used barkeeper's friend and an old toothbrush with actually some bleach too, to just really clean them good. They were pretty dirty, and they came out really good. I painted on both of these cabinets the first coat, or on one of them I painted white, and the other I'm going to paint green. But I'm doing the base coats now on them just to get them all covered up. I had a lot of patching to do on them. And again, I'm really wanting them to keep that rustic look. So I don't want them to look perfect, but I didn't want it to have quite as many dings in it as it had. And these I cleaned with my usual Crud Cutter inside and out really good because they were pretty dirty. I think the people we got these from used these for nightstands because they said they had a real high bed, so they couldn't find anything that was tall enough for nightstands. So that's where the cabinet came down on my hand. But the top two drawers look like they pull out, but it's just kind of a faux look on that part. And I think the little cubby areas inside are pretty neat because you could put a lot of different things in there. I like the herb names that are on the front. I'm going to actually put those back on the cabinet with my stamps from Iron Orchid I think it's called the typesetter set, the lowercase letters I'm going to use, and place them back on there when I'm done. The backs of these both cabinets were never painted, so I for sure wanted to paint these to make them look a lot nicer, because being on wheels, you're going to be rolling it around possibly, and so I definitely wanted to paint these. I'm starting with my first coat of the sage green color. This color is actually made by Debbie's Design Diary, and it's called Apothecary. And it's just a really nice neutral sage green color. But I'm also planning on doing some other greens that are lighter and darker with some maybe white and black too, just to kind of do some dry brushing on it for the finish, so it's not just solid. And this one also was not painted on the back, so I definitely wanted to paint it. And I did do some patching of some things on the dresser before I painted it, but again, I'm not trying to make it look perfect on this one, because I still want it to look very rustic. I think it's what makes it look cute. It's always amazing how different putting paint on something can change the whole look of it. Sometimes even if you're painting something the same color that it was, it just makes it always look so nice. I sometimes use my fingertips to do behind the knobs, like this type of knob, because it's so hard to get a brush in there because of the angle of the knob around the edge, and so I sometimes just use my finger. Okay, I'm starting on the second coat of the white, and I knew it would take at least 2 coats, maybe 3, but this is, I think, gonna look really cute. And I wanted to do these 2 different colors because I don't think someone would want to buy 2 of them anyway, so I thought I'll do them different colors and we'll see which one will sell first. Because they both are really going to end up being pretty neutral, I think. They would kind of go with any colors. One thing about chalk paint that you kind of have to remember is that it is a water-based paint, and you have to remember that if you're going to be going over it on your second coat, like I am now, if you don't let the first coat dry pretty good, sometimes the moisture in the second coat can actually start taking off your first coat if you're brushing in an area too much, like if you're trying to do some blending or whatever. So if you're trying to do that, you can, but you want to just make sure that your first coat is really good and dry. Like, depending on where you live, that could be a couple of hours or it could be overnight. But if I'm painting a piece, I usually try to put all my coats of paint on in one day with time in between for it to dry. But then I will let it dry overnight a lot of times before I do any dry brushing or blending or sealing it. because I use usually a water-based sealer also. So, because anytime if you've painted something and it turns yellow or starts to get brown looking, a lot of times that is just from because the water-based product caused bleed through. So letting the coats dry really good in between will kind of help with that sometimes. Although some pieces you definitely have to seal with shellac to keep it from bleeding through. And sometimes like mahogany pieces or cherry pieces, I always do at least 2 coats of shellac on before I even begin to paint it, because those two bleed really bad. I noticed on this back edge of the green when I forgot to put the stain on, but I'm actually going to be putting Varathane's gel stain in hickory on the tops of both of these anyway, because I wanted it to be a little bit darker than what it was. And I can easily let these sit overnight or 2 if I need to dry good. So I'm just using a foam brush to put it on, and then I'll just use an old rag to kind of wipe off the excess. Because if you don't wipe off the excess, it really never seems to dry, even if you feel like you've put it on very thin. I mean, even with wiping off the excess, it usually, for me, maybe it's because I live in a humid climate, but it always seems like it takes at least overnight before you can really seal it or work on it at all. You can see the reason why I don't really like using the foam brushes is the stick on them always seems to break, or the tip gets soggy with paint and you really have no control over where it's going. But I'm just finishing up with this one, but it's usually why I don't like to use these type of brushes. And you just take a rag, just a clean rag, and just go over it just so you get the excess off. On this green one, I am ready to do some dry brushing on this with some other green colors that are lighter and darker. And one actually has a little bit of blue in it even. And then I'll use white and black also, just to kind of make it look, want it to look like it's got lots of layers underneath. sometimes I'll use a little bit of water too if I've gotten too much paint in an area, or I want to just blend it out more. And really, this method you can't mess up because you just keep dry brushing until you like the way it looks. And if you don't like it, you can always paint over it. So it's pretty easy to do. I'm using 180 grit sandpaper to distress the edges and just go over the whole piece lightly, just to remove any little bumps from the paint or anything. I want it to have kind of that sort of rustic farmhouse look. And anytime I do distressing on pieces, I always seal the piece first, and I use General Finishes flat finish, and it's a water-based polyurethane. I just really like the way it dries and cures, and I always do that, seal my pieces when I'm done painting after it's dried overnight, before I do my distressing. And a lot of times the sealer will pull up little burrs or fuzz, anything like that, and feel sharp or hard, so I like to sand those off. Then now on these two cabinets, I just have to add the herb names back on, and you can see on the top left there my typeset letters. I use the lowercase ones, and I always, when I'm using my stamps, I always have the same layout. I always usually use a tray that I lay my stamps or letters out that I'm going to be using. And I have my ink pad, and I also usually have a couple of paper towels that are pretty wet that I lay on either a paper plate or I think this time I just had them on the garage floor, but that way when I'm stamping my letters, each one I stamp, I can wipe it on the wet paper towels to get the remainder of the ink off, and then put it back on the tray where my other letters are, so that way they're ready to go each time. And it just kind of keeps the buildup off your stamps, because I use my stamps quite a bit. And you can see here I just used some blue tape that I put across the top of each knob, just to use the top of the tape edge as a line to kind of go against. If you wanted to, you could actually draw a line or something to go on, but I just use the tape. I pretty much just eyeball. Sometimes I'll make little marks, but I usually like to do it with tape so that I don't have to do any paint touch-ups. But it helps me to get the letters straight, and I'm not going for a perfectly straight finished look anyway. I'm wanting it to look rusted, so if some of the letters are a little bit off, that's okay. And I'm using, you'll probably notice, I'm using the top of the knob as the center of the word. So I usually start with the middle letter of a word, so that way I know I've got it in the middle, and then I build out to the right and to the left so that I know the word is pretty much going to be in the center. And it just makes it really easy to do the stamping. And sometimes what I'll do, if I have stamps I'm going to put on for design, like flowers or whatever, I will sometimes even tape the stamps onto the piece and just look at it before I start stamping to get an idea of where I want them to go. And once I got my letters on, I did go over them very lightly with a sponge sander, just to take some of the extra darkness off from the stamping. And then I just put a little bit of the same General Finishes water-based sealer on top of them to protect them. But these stamps are just so easy to use, and again, if you don't like what you do or you make a mistake, you can always correct it. You can always wipe it off. I always usually keep baby wipes right next to me so I can wipe off if I make a mistake. And you can see the wheels that we put on are really nice wheels. They should roll around really good. On the tops, I'm using Wipe On Poly just to seal it. Probably do a couple of coats of this. Figured this would be a little bit more durable for the use that it's going to have with setting maybe something wet on here if it's in a kitchen or whatever. So. I put just a little piece of block of wood under the top there just in case any came over. I didn't want it to stick there. And I'm doing my second coat now. And this Wipe On Poly only takes a couple hours to dry. And there's Miss Bella. She's my supervisor. And I realized it needed more, so I'm using Behr's oil-based spar urethane to coat it again. And I put 2 coats of this on because I really wanted to have a nice thick coverage. And here are the before pictures. Of course, it does have the wheels on it, but these are the after pictures. And I think they turned out really cute, and it was fun doing them. I hope you enjoyed this video. You can check out some of my other ones. I try to share lots of tips or things that I've learned from doing furniture. If you liked it, please click the like button and feel free to make comments. And I hope you liked it. And thanks for watching.